sure that the levels are right. Gonna take just a second because apparently there was an update that I can't adjust the levels outside of Twitch. There we go. And let's do some hand quizzes. Let me shut this off. There we go. Not distracted. All right. So looks like a quiz from Gripst. Let's get it on. Let me turn that on. Oh, I gotta do this so you guys can hear it. Hang on. All right.
Hello everyone, Evan Jarvis here for PokerCoaching.com. Welcome to another tournament quiz from the $2,500 buy-in World Poker Tour Falls View event that I made a decent run in earlier this year. We have pocket tens off a nice stack. We built our stack up to 63,000. Face a 1,400 open from someone who come to the table. They're very chatty, they're very splashy, they're playing a lot of pots. Definitely more of the recreational player variety than the professional player variety. It's on us. Middle position. What should we do? Pocket 10. Should we fold, call, 3-bet to 4,200, or 3-bet to 6,800?
One thing I like about Grips is that he gives you good information on the live players. So, he kind of gave up the ghost here. This is a chatty, splashy player. He's very recreational. He just came to the table. He's kind of having a good time. You know what I'm saying? And believe it or not, people will enter $2,500 tournaments with no expectation of winning. It's literally no expectation of ROI. I don't understand how people can do that. I'm too competitive. But here we are. So the move here is obviously to 3-bet because we want to isolate this player. We have position on them. We don't want to just call and let other people in there to take away pots that belong to us. So I think a raise to 4,200 is about right. That's about 3x. We could even go a little bit bigger, but I think this is a little bit too big versus a chatty, splashy player because we want him to play. You know what I'm saying? So let's raise it up.
This is a spot where we can go either way, and we're basically mixing it between 3-betting and between flatting. If we check our trusty Gto Charts, facing a UTG open in middle position, tens is just a call. However, facing a middle position open from middle position, tens is a 3-bet. So what does that mean? Well, that means if our opponent is opening the typical under the gun type range, something like this, should be more inclined to flat the hand. And if they're opening more of a middle position type range, something like this, we want to be 3-betting the hand.
This is a good way to adjust how you understand the charts in that this player is loose and splashy. So, he's not exactly the most tight, aggressive player at the table. So you can just discount his raises to a different position. Now, obviously, if he comes out of first position, you kind of leave it as it is, maybe a little bit looser. But out of even second or third position, he's going to be playing much looser. So he's playing here like he should be playing here. You know what I'm saying? He's playing way too many hands. So you can downgrade that and look at the difference in the charts and say, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm going to play even, looser than my position to compensate. So it's a nice little technique, and I'm glad Grips brought it up because I don't think I ever would have mentioned it. It's just something you learn and study.
But the EV of them is very close either way. It's kind of one of those spots where whichever option you pick, as long as it wasn't fold, you pick the right option. We go 4,200 here. No need to go for the really large sizing of 4x, especially against the early position open. We can go with a smaller size here and still expect to be able to isolate the player fairly often and get a pot heads up. But you don't always get what you want. The spot on the table, who is, well, they're the spot. They're the one that everyone wants to play pots with. Cold calls, the button cold calls, the big blind cold calls, the opener cold calls, and we are really rooting for a 10 on the flop. And very fortunately,
Nice.
on a 10 of hearts, 7 of spades, 4 of clubs board, that is exactly what, my friend, we got. Action checks to us. What should we do? Should we check, bet 4,800, bet 9,600, or bet 14,800?
Hey, what's up, Pocket? How you doing, my man? Good to see you, bro. Glad you came out. Love the chatter. This is a very different situation now. If you haven't noticed, we have pretty much the board, all of the board. Like if there was two spades out here or two hearts, we could bet because then we would get action from draws. But in all honesty, we have this so board locked, and there's fucking four other players in this tournament, one of whom is the spot, meaning the guy who's going to give it away, who we want to play pots against because he's not a good player. This is one where we check all day long. Even betting small, what can someone play on with us? You know what I'm saying? Maybe somebody can call with overcards, but unless we set over set at somebody, there's no reason to bet here. And I'm not a fan of slow playing hands. I honestly think that fast play is the new slow play, meaning it looks trickier to fast play somebody than it does to check against them because people are kind of wise to that. That move has been made in movies. You know, Rounders, Lucky You, you know, The Cincinnati Kid. The movies have recognized that sometimes when you show weakness, you're very strong. So, but in this particular case, because there are so many players, I'm going to go ahead and check. I don't think we gain anything by betting. I think we get too many folds too often, and we have the board locked. So screw that. Let's check.
In this spot where we have the nuts, we kind of can't go wrong here. Checking to give the spot a chance to take a stab at the pot. There's a lot of money out there, and giving the button a chance to stab at the pot, both very fine plays. We also represent that we have missed overcards and that we're giving up on the pot, which leads to other players who may have a hand like pocket jacks feeling more confident about their hand. For the large bet sizing, if someone did cold call with an overpair, jacks, queens, kings, unlikely aces, but you never know, they will likely continue for that, and then we'll be forced to go all in on the next street because there is so little chips left behind. For that reason, we don't need to go with the largest sizing to get all the money in. We can go half pot here, and everyone other than the big blind will have a half pot bet remaining on the turn. Big blind will have a 3/4 pot bet remaining on the turn. Still pretty shallow. And if we go for the smaller bet of 4,800, we both give our opponents room to move in over the top with a pocket pair if they're so inclined. And we still have about a pot size bet remaining against the big blind and half pot amongst everyone else. So I opted to go for 4,800 here, but honestly, all the options here are really good for the various.
I like that too because it can look like just an auto C bet. Like because there's no big cards on this board, it can. Some players will misinterpret players' calling range as overcards, you know, or as big cards pre-flop. So like king queen suited, ace, you know, jack suited, ace queen offsuit versus a 3-bet pot. But in all honesty, the proper way to play those hands would be to 4-bet. Because if the other players are aware that this is a loose, chatty player, and you're a good player who might be isolating, you know, if you have ace queen on the button here, you should probably 4-bet. Just because you're going to want your hand to play well. The thing is here, I think this is a situation where greed has kind of taken over the table, who are weaker players. So this player comes in, we try to ISO the spot, who doesn't give a thought about it. He makes the call, and then the button and the big blind are like, well, I'm coming along because of the price here. My hand's not that great. So I don't 100% agree with this by Grips, but I do see it as, well, we're just going to bet a little something. And this is where being a live player eludes me because you have to be aware of all the other stacks at the table. Obviously, he is. You heard about his stack to pot ratio of what we're betting. So if we just bet anything here and somebody calls it, they have about a 1-to-1 stack to pot or less ratio going to the turn. So this is obviously, I think, the superior move, betting 4,800. I would have missed that, but it's not a huge mistake because we should expect someone to bet. My problem is that in situations like this where we have it totally board locked, I don't think everybody folds automatically, but we don't know who kind of has an idea that they like their hand, or we might take away bluffing opportunities from them by doing this because sometimes players will have, you know, king 9 here or something, and you know, and they'll just not make a move because they're just like done with the hand. Then when they see a check around the flop, then they'll go ahead and go for a bluff, and it's usually a fairly big bluff. But they're not going to float this flop on you because there's just too many other players in the pot. Like if the button has it, this is a horrible spot for the button to float. So it's interesting. I do like Grips play better. than my own, but I don't have enough experience playing live doing this, so I kind of have to take that into consideration.
Reasons. If you can pick up any tells on your opponent's eagerness to bet or eagerness to fold, that's going to sway your decision. The more eagerness to fold you see, you want to go with the smaller sizing, and the more eagerness to bet you see, go ahead and check, let them put the bets in, and then based on the action decide.
It is a live play thing where he made it 4,200 pre-flop and he went just over that on the flop with many players in. A lot of players would see this as a non-bet, like it just doesn't mean anything. A good thinking player will do this in order to invoke that thought in others. So another little thing to be aware of.
If you want to check raise or just check call. Go 4,800. The big blind calls, who's one of the cold callers, is a bit more of a solid player. Chatty and splashy folds. Now we have 31,000 in the middle, 36,000 behind. 8 of diamonds hits on the turn. Doesn't really change much unless our opponent has 5-6 suited, but I don't think this opponent's cold calling a 3-bet with 5-6 suited. I think he's much more weighted towards the big pairs. Maybe some sets too. So he checks to us. Action is on you. What should you do? Should you check? Bet 12,800, bet 18,400, or go all in?
In a world where this is a shitty player, then betting is... I'm sorry. In a world where this is a shitty player who cold calls a 3-bet with hands like 5-6, suited or offsuit, the 8's probably the nut worst card. There are times when he can have Jack-9 as well, but with nobody calling behind, I really don't think those hands continue. So I think Grips is right. I think we have it monstered here. So the question is, how do you get the money in? I got to back this up just to see his stack again.
But I don't think this opponent's cold calling.
All right, so he's got 36K effective, which is about a pot-size bet right now. So after he calls, he's going to have 32K. Or he already called it, so he has 36K left. I really don't think there's much to do here. We could check for sure, because now we kind of have somebody on the hook. But honestly, I think you just keep betting. If he has an overpair, which I think is our definite read here, I don't think he's going to give it up on the turn if we bet reasonably. So I like 12-8. If we were much deeper, I would probably check because I would be looking to make a big raise on the river and look like bullshit. But I'm just going to go ahead and bet 12-8. Going all in isn't even the worst thing in the world because if he has pocket jacks, it's about a 1-to-1 stack to pot ratio. But here's the problem. It is still 72 big blinds. And this is where bad players will make good decisions and say, you know what? I don't know what's going on here. I give up. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you could still have aces. So I like the small betting to continue. I think it's fine.
If the board were a little bit more draw heavy, if say this was the 8 of spades or the 8 of clubs or even the 8 of hearts, going all in definitely makes sense. We have a little bit more than a pot size bet, and when the board is extremely draw heavy and we protect our hand against draws, we can make that play. It also just makes our hand look weaker and gets us here called by more hands. But given that the 8 is just an offsuit 8, doesn't bring any extra flush draws, I don't think we need to go with the super large sizing. Also, I don't think there's any real merit in checking. We want to continue to build this pot. Once our opponent calls a bet on this flop, he doesn't have nothing. He has, at the minimum, a draw which has improved to a pair or an overpair. And against those hands, we want to continue building the pot. I think that both betting about half his stack...
Draw that improved to a pair 8-9. So having 8-9 here would reasonably call, and now picks up a pair on the turn, would reasonably continue.
And a third of his stack are pretty solid plays. I went for the slightly smaller size because, well, I wanted him to feel like he had more chips to call this bet with and still have room to fold on the river if he were so inclined, rather than feeling he basically had to make a decision for his tournament at this point, which is what I think the half stack bet would be.
Yeah, half stack kind of gets him committed to the point where he's like, well, I'm probably going to have to go with this all the way. Players do think about that. They're like, well, if I call this bet, I'm probably going to have to call a river bet. And with a hand like 8-9 or whatever, you're either going to jam it or you're just going to fold right there. And it's kind of 50-50. So you kind of want to guarantee that he's going to continue drawing to very slim odds, you know what I'm saying? Just having a gut shot. or having the one street at an open ender that's 16%, and you can check back the river if that's truly your read. But in position, there's just no reason to make him scared at any point in this hand. So we just bet crappily.
Yeah, we can easily have this, and we can have better hands, aces and kings, that have 3-bet and continue to bet. So he's in a tough spot here with pocket jacks or pocket queens, and we want to make it as easy as possible for him to call here. So like the smaller sizing, we do get the call. River is a deuce of hearts. He checks. 23,000 behind. Actions on you. What should you check? Bet 10,400 for about half his stack, or move all in.
Well, this is kind of a toughie because I don't play live tournaments that much, and I certainly don't play them with stacks as deep as this. I play more like dailies, little $60, $100 dailies when I go out and play live, but haven't done that in a while. So it's kind of tough because we want to get all the money in. I think it looks less suspicious if we jam. But then again, it is a live tournament, and live players do something kind of funny sometimes. I do think if he has an overpair, he's not going to fold at this point. And I think we've set it up to look like bet, because if he was more convinced that we had queens or better, and he has jacks, I think that he would just have folded the turn, honestly. Like, we've kind of walked the dog. If I was to bet this hand, I would probably bet something. I wouldn't base it on his stack. I would bet something like, not so much based on the pot, but based on my previous bet. So like my previous bet being 12-8, I would probably bet about 15. Because a lot of times you'll get players who will just call it because they're not going to be eliminated from the tournament. I think 10-4, if you bet that, you're kind of trying to get check raised all in. And I don't think this player has a hand strong enough to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and go all in.
At this point, the pot is gigantic. We can move all in. He'll be getting 4-1 on a call. That's pretty good odds. I don't think we need to go for a milk bet here, about 10,400. If we were to have any bluff here, we would follow through by going with the jam. So to balance that out, we also want to jam with our best
right.
hands.
Looks like a jam. Or it looks like a bluff.
Please, please, please do not check in this spot with the fourth nuts. They're effectively not. We move all in, hoping to get hero calls, and our opponent makes a disciplined laydown, but we still pick up a very, 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 very nice pot. Anyway, this has been Evan Jarvis for PokerCoaching.com. Hope you enjoyed this quiz. Hope you learned a thing or two. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
It's an interesting thing, too, because his point of it looks more like a bluff if we jam. That's exactly the betting pattern of bet, except it's a little wrong. So, like, on the flop with a bet, you would absolutely bet what you bet, about 4,800, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 5,000. But here's the thing. There were 5 players in the pot. You're not going to try to go bet versus 5 players. So when you make the under bet and then get heads up, well, now you can. But on the turn, you're also not going to bet as small as he did. You're going to bet about 14,000, 15,000, leaving him with about 20,000. So that you can geometrically size it on the river as being a pot-sized bet that he would have to call to hero you, which is what you want when you're bluffing somebody, because then they realized, oh my God, I just got worked into the pot here. I give it up. You know what I'm saying? And they don't overcommit too many chips. In this exact scenario, we would have bet too small to set up a bet, but I don't think players realize that. You have to look at all the bets in context on the river, and a lot of players don't think back to what happened on the flop, what did he bet on the turn, what did he do pre-flop. A lot of players don't think about that. They just think about the street that they're on. So I think this works best to look like a bluff when we have the monster, because it looks like we just have ace-king here going bet. If we were a bad player. We don't know the other player's impression of us, but we know what a bad player would do trying to pull off that move in the wrong spot. So I like the way the hand was played. I don't think it matters we didn't get called. I think it was very close. I honestly think the player had less than a pair of jacks. I think he may have had some pair with the straight draw, like either 7-9 or 8-9, something like that. Even 7-6 really, right? Because now on the turn you've got the 5, you've got the 9 you can hit. Hands like that. I mean, it's hard to say he would have a 10 because there's only one left, but it's possible. I definitely think, though, in this particular scenario, the best bet I can make is 8-9, because that's the only one that really plays out. It's the strongest draw that plays out exactly this way. Nice. I like this one. A little nuanced. Let's go to the next one. I don't even know what the next one is.
Pocket sixes here in the hijack, sitting on a 50 big blind stack. Do we want to limp in here, raise it to 230, or raise it to 350?
50 big blinds, obviously this is near a tournament beginning, is kind of, it's an interesting thing because it is a larger stack, but it's not huge. You don't have 100 big blinds, right? I think opening at 2.3 is 5. I would probably go 2,500, or sorry, 2.5 instead of 2.3. But I think it's absolutely fine. It just looks like the start of a tournament because all the players are about even. 109 online tournament. Yeah, and Faraz is very well thought out. So I think 2.3 is fine. Personally, I'm going 2.5 still at this point, and dropping my bets down a little closer to the bubble. But I don't play many 109s online, so let's see.
I'm just coming in raising here for standard 230 open. Opening larger than this isn't really too necessary, and maybe you go a little bit bigger, but I think 350 is a bit too large. But since we are deep stacked, I wouldn't mind maybe going 2.5x, 2.6x. As far as limping in, I wouldn't really recommend limping in unless you've worked on specifically some sort of limp strategy at 50 big blinds where you're using kind of some soft,
which nobody has. Nobody has a limping strategy for 50 big blinds out of the hijack. I don't care, what level of player you are. It's a waste of time because you're calculating something that may be correct, but not enough players are going to understand that. So you're just going to get over-raised way too much. So your limping strategy here should be with hands that you want to get raised with. Hands like ace-king, ace-queen suited, things like that. I don't think I would even do it with aces because that's people's initial read when you limp in, I think. But limping in late with aces, kings, queens can be very profitable. But when they raise, you kind of want it to get called so you can re-raise and squeeze. But when somebody raises and then you just re-raise after a limp, you kind of give up the ghost. So they kind of really have to have something there to continue. That's why it's good to do with ace king and ace queen suited as well, because now you're doing it more often than if you just did it if you had aces, kings, and queens in late position when folded to. And that means you're going to get more opportunities at it. So the fact that you're going to get more folds, it makes the move more valid because it increases the overall strength of your range when you do that. Then every time it folds to you, once you pull this off like once or twice at the same table, then once it folds to you every time in this position, you can then limp anything. And players will start just seeing the flop with you rather than 3-betting as much as they would because they're going to be really afraid, logically, that you're limping your best hands and then going for the trap raise. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's really fun to do when you have like hands like 9-10 or things like that where normally the move to throw people off is to raise with them. Now you've actually limped with them. People think you're on aces. You flop 2-pair, or you flop a straight or something like that, and you see a guy go broke with 2-pair to you. Like, it's really fun stuff. But side note, sorry.
solver-based outputs, and you have kind of a thought-out balanced strategy, backing it up. But if you haven't done that type of work, I wouldn't. I generally just don't even have a limp raise, a limp range at this stack size, unless it's something I'm doing exploitatively. So we get called by the button. The flop is 8-8 deuce. Do we want to check? Do we want to bet 210 or bet 360?
It's not really a down bet if we bet 210. I think my bet's somewhere around 240. But this is Faraz Jaka, and the thing to remember is the man works with Pio Solver all the time. He's a very high-level player. His study is very detailed. So he's probably found the correct bet being 210. So that's probably the minimum and maximum his bet should be to be ideal. In-game, personally, I'm not trying to make as subtle moves as he is. I mean, he's a very nuanced player. The fields I play against are not as nuanced, obviously, because they're smaller buy-in. So For me, my bet is about 230, 240, somewhere in there. Little better than the third pot, you know. But I think 210 is just fine. I think 360 is too much because we don't really gain any information when this player calls. And I do believe whatever we bet here, this player is going to call 90% of the time. They're going to call us with overcards floating in position. They're going to call us with any other pair. And 210 allows us to set up a bet scenario if we do figure out that we're beat and we need to scare him off of something like pocket sevens. You know what I'm saying? Even pocket nines might proceed cautiously. So, yeah, I like 210.
This spot we're going to
Ooh.
mix between betting and checking. And when we do bet, we're going to use the larger size. Sometimes in these spots, I'm trying to figure out what size to pick. I just kind of ask myself, well, by betting small, are we even folding anything out? Just not necessarily with when we have sixes, just with our range in general. And it's hard to think of a lot of hands that are going to fold because they're going to have a lot of suited hands they flatted, and most of them have back doors. Even the ones that don't, you know, they're going to be stuff like king, queen that can easily call versus small bet. So just betting small just doesn't really accomplish much. I mean, ace highs are going to call. King highs are, for the most part, going to be calling. And then everything below that.
So this is a leak I have in my game where I overthink it to the point of not trusting the true strength of the hand. So I think that my issue here is I should be trying to charge those backdoor draws. Now, backdoor draws don't have much, you know, just overcards and, you know, backdoor flush and straight draws. So because they don't have much, I don't have to bet kill pot style, meaning I don't have to bet 500 here. Like if this board is eight of hearts, nine of hearts, you know, deuce of clubs, and I have pocket jacks, well, then I'm going to want to bet bigger. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to want to bet like 500 because there's a lot of reasonable draws, straight draws, flush draws, and stuff like that with overcards. You know, ace 10 of hearts, you know, can continue very easily. 10 jack, all those hands, they can continue very easily against me and draw out on me. So the thing that I should remember is that in those scenarios, when I have pocket jacks on that board, I should be betting bigger. I should be betting like 500, you know, right about 75, 80% pot, because we want to charge those draws and tap into that greed. Then when the turn comes off bad, we can really hammer them. And some players will just lose their fucking mind and you'll get all the money in on the turn and all they have is a flush draw. You know what I'm saying? Which is, you know, it's scary, but we have a heart in our hand, let's say, with the jack of hearts. They have 8 outs once. That's pretty good for a double, you know. You're going to win 65% of the time about. But in this scenario, I have the feasible best hand. But betting too small, my hand's not invulnerable. Like if I had queens in this spot, betting small is a very good idea because my hand is much stronger. You know what I'm saying? My hand has less chance to get drawn out on. If somebody has king, queen here, and, you know, they only have 3 outs to beat me, whereas versus sixes, you know, they have 6 outs to beat me immediately, plus they have backdoor heart draws, other reasons to continue. So it makes more sense. A hand that needs less protection should be betting larger, or should be betting smaller, and a hand that needs more protection should be betting bigger. So this is a leak I'm aware of in my game, and this is why I do the Wake Up With Me's streams, because I need to make sure that these spots are not still fucking floating around in my head before I start my day of play, and today is a play day, by the way. So this is definitely a spot I think Faraz is right to bet bigger, because when we bet 360, now somebody with just like the king, queen of clubs or the 10 jack of spades or something like that, they're going to go, nah, it's a little too much to... I'm hoping on too many dreams here to hit these back doors. It's just too much to go for. And it's not suspiciously big like betting 500 or so, where it just looks like we're immediately trying to bully the pot down with like ace, king, ace, queen. So I understand what he's saying, and this is a leak in my game, and I'm glad it came up.
It kind of connects to the 8 and is probably suited. So betting small just doesn't accomplish anything. So I'm going to use the 360 size or check. I think both of those are reasonable. The reason I might consider checking is because there's still pairs they could have flatted, like 7s and 9s here, that maybe they decide not to 3-bet. We are pretty deep. So I don't know if I'm necessarily betting into those or betting into like 3s, 4s, and 5s, and they do have position. Whereas once I get up to like 7s, now there's not really too many overpairs I'm worried about. It's just 9s left now. So 7s would be a clear bet for me, and I just kind of...
He's not worried about more overpairs because 10s and higher, 10s through aces, is going to 3-bet him pre-flop from the button. 9s can flat, but that's pretty much the dividing line. He's not wrong. We're obviously not even considering 8s because he would have flopped quads. Very unlikely, but also it's part of the flatting range on the button in position, versus a late position opener. Your pocket 5s become very strong here versus a late position opener because you have position. So when this player doesn't know if their 6s through 9s are good and they check, you can then barrel them off of it with a pair of 5s. You might be good, or you might be bluffing. It's one of those ones where you don't know, but the betting structure is the same, so it doesn't really matter.
Repairs I'm worried about, it's just 9s left now. So 7s would be a clear bet for me, and I just kind of ask myself, am I betting into a lot of better pairs here that might even check if I check? So yeah, that's the rationale behind this being kind of a mixed spot between some checking. So we bet larger size, we get called. Turn is the 9 of diamonds. What do we want to do now? We can check. We can do a large bet for 1140 or a small bet for 570.
I'm of the opinion that if we're going to continue with this hand, we're either looking to hero or throttle. So personally, I err on the side of aggression. Now, the 9 is a really good card for our opponent. That's the thing that's going to slow me down here. Hands like 9-10, 7-9, even 10-jack. All those hands just got a huge equity bump by this 9 coming off. So that kind of makes me very reluctant to bet. If I wasn't considering the board, I think I would bet the 1140 bet, because I'm setting up a river jam for a 3-barrel, and if we bet 1140 and he calls it, that puts like 2,300 more in the pot, so that's like 3,700, and we'd have 3,400 left, so it would make sense to bet, get all our money in on the river. We have done geometric betting. Yeah, I don't think 570 accomplishes anything at this point. A third pot bet. Granted, you do allow yourself, when he calls, there's 2,800 in the pot, and it does allow you that very cool and nuanced Matt Affleck 1.5x pot bet on the river when you jam. But I think more times than not, you're gonna smash your face into something that's gonna beat you and hero call you for just a monster bet on the river. So I think I'm leaning towards checking here, just because of all the equity that my opponent picked up, and he's gonna check back hands like, 9-10 can check back here very easily. So can 7-9. So can 10-jack. 10-jack is very likely to bet. But hands that have improved to a pair, they may just back off, and they might see us as pot controlling with like a pair of 10s. You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. So I think I like the check here, but then again, I'm not really awake yet, so let's see.
I'm just checking here. If we were going to bet...
A little pat on the
I
back.
don't want to be betting into a 9x that could have floated. I think 10-jack and jack-queen definitely would have floated that flop, especially with the backdoor flush draw. And now we're betting into that, and they might just steal the pot from us on the river.
Yeah.
So I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah, that's the other thing. He has position, so we could be setting up steals for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, because if we bet the flop, bet the turn, we kind of have to decide to bet the river. But he's right. Queen-jack, 10-jack, 10-7, all those hands, they might float us. Even 6-7, you know what I'm saying? And they all have so many blockers to the really good hands that are improved by this board that when we show any weakness at all, they're going to just bet us off the hand. So on the river. So we can check the turn for pot control and then make the play on the river if we want, or we can check and decide if whether or not they're going to bluff at us. Now, if a player has 10-jack, a lot of times they're going to bet, but a lot of times they're not going to. It's probably about... it's close to 50-50. I think most players these days are going to bet the 10-jack, but they might not want to get blown off of it because it is on the turn. Our hand is kind of face up, not like they know we have sixes, but they know we have one pair. So, yeah. Now that I think about it, a player's more likely to check 10 jack here because you can improve to something like even a 10 improves your hand dramatically to top pair. But they have all the outs in the world, and then when the river bricks off and we check to them, they're gonna bluff the 10 jack. So then we can just pick it off as a hero call. So yeah, I like the check here a lot now.
Which is why I mostly just want to check here. So I'm definitely checking here. I could maybe see some small betting. I guess you do get a little bit of protection out of some maybe ace high, 2 overs, and king queen, but that's not a lot of hands. There's only 1 card left, so I don't think that's super important. So yeah, I'm by default mostly checking here. Player does a fairly large bet, 1140. Do we want to call or fold?
Interesting. We don't have much invested here. And that bet is awfully large. With no reads on the player, I gotta say this looks fairly weak. Like, to me, this looks like the draw. The problem is that we're gonna have to fade. So let's give him the best draw, the 10 jack, right? So that's 8 cards for a straight and 6 cards for pairs that beat us. So that's 14 cards. So that's 28% on the river. And here's the thing. He's only going to have a pot size bet left because if we call the 1140, that puts about 2,300 in the pot, 37, about 4,700 in the pot. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 27, right? 23 plus 4 is 27. 3,700 in the pot. He's going to have 3,500 left behind. So he's setting up the bluff. This is one where I think the buy-in would fuck with me, but my standard thing here would be to call this bet because it just seems too... He's not doing this with an 8, and he's not doing this with a 9. He could be doing this with a pair, like overpair, like 10s, I guess. But honestly, I don't think he's ever got 10s. You know what I'm saying? Because I think 10s 3-bet pre-flop. Jacks, yeah. Now, what hands don't 3-bet pre-flop that beat us that are overpairs? 7s, yeah. But I don't think he's going to take this line with 7s because he's turning his hand into an absolute bluff. It's a good time for him to do it because he has us beat. But all other pairs, 5s, 4s, 3s. And really only aces also. Because even kings 3-bets, I think. And I don't think 9s. 9s is in the flatting range, but just barely. But now that there's a 9 on board, I don't know the player that improves to the absolute nuts and then starts betting right at it versus a player who just checked. So I'm counting that out. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the call here. And it's rough because we have to fade the river. But I don't think we want to fold here when the momentum shifts from our lead to his lead. I don't like folding right away, so I'm going to call.
I'm definitely calling here. And this is a spot I do think some people might overfold. And you really just got to ask yourself, what are you continuing with here? So we're already folding a bunch of stuff like ace-king, ace-queen, maybe king-queen, king-jack.
That's an interesting concept because I always tend to focus on what is this player doing it with. But then again, I should think a little bit ahead and say, wait a minute, if I continue, what are the hands I'm continuing with? Because he's right. I'm not continuing with ace-king at this point or ace-queen or any unpaired big suited cards, you know what I'm saying? So what am I continuing with? Pairs and monsters. So like full houses, an 8, an ace-8, an 8-9, something like that. Or, I might have binked the set on the turn. I'm more likely to have the 9s on the turn. I might even check aces here. You know what I'm saying? In order to make this trap. So I would definitely check queens to make this trap. Aces, it's kind of meh. I probably bet small. But it's the same hand, basically. It's an overpair that crushes his range. So I should have definitely thought ahead about when I continue, what am I continuing with? because this player is going to know that. And that's going to incite him to bluff more on the river. So, interesting thought process.
King 10. Just any of these overcards that we decided to c-bet and not continue here. So that's quite a bit of hands we're folding. We may have done some mixing with 3s, 4s, 5s as well. So we do have those worst pairs to consider folding here. I think if we have something like 10s plus, we want to keep going for value/protection.
Yeah.
Maybe we could check some overpairs. If I was going to check an overpair, I'd probably choose something like aces that doesn't need as much protection. Jacks, queens, quite a bit. Player could have turned a 9, and we could get 2 more streets of value. So we don't have a ton of pairs we're checking that are better than this. Maybe, well, definitely 7s. I would definitely be checking 7s. So once we check here, what do we have to call with? And it's hard to think of a lot other than basically, maybe a 9 if we wanted to mix a 9 in there. But I would probably be betting a lot of my 9s. So for value/protection. So yeah, it's just if we're folding this, I can't think of what we're calling with. There's not much left, and we're just folding too much.
Right.
And that's really why we really need to call here. Of course, you do want to make sure this player has the ability to do some bluffs here. Maybe there's some players that if they bet this size, they're just never bluffing. And playing live poker, you can pick up on reads like that. That could be a very exceptional situation where I might fold, but in this spot we didn't really have any reads. It's online. When you're playing online, it's just a random screen name, and you just want to stick with kind of GTO lines for the most part, unless you have a really good read on a player or the population. 4 of spades, rivers, we check, they shove, and same spot here. Do we want to call or fold?
I think this is a pretty much snap call. I mean, it seems scary as hell, but honestly, there just aren't a lot of hands that he can have here. And if you think that there's a hand that he can have here that beats us, I'd love to hear your opinion. And I will explain to you why that's not the case. I think we've gone through it already. I think most likely you're going to see is a busted draw that really improved on the turn. 6-7 or 10 jack. Queen jack can go this way too. Obviously, any ace can go this way, that decided to float us, ace, queen, things like that. Ace, jack, more likely because he has a jack. But I think this is an overfold. If we fold here, I just think it's too weak. We're just going to give up way too many pots, and we can't be folding these because in a non-aggressive position, we look like we liked our hand. Like to him, it looks like we liked our hand, then we didn't like our hand, and then we didn't want to fold our hand, and then now we're really weak. When in true logic, if you understand the actual math and the solver math, this is a snap call all day long. And you know what? Let's go one step further. I know I'm kind of overanalyzing this, but Faraz is such a really nuanced player, and I know he's done this work, so let's do the work with him. So here's Equilab, and we're going to construct this player's range. We said he would have 3-bet all the good hands, aces, kings, queens, jacks, 10s, ace, king, ace, queen off, king, queen, suit, ace, queen suited, ace, queen, ace, jack suited, ace, 10 suited. All these hands that would 3-bet, you know what I'm saying? They're not there. So there's hands like, let's call the suited aces on down. All those hands would call us. I think sometimes you're going to see an ace-10 offsuit, but I think it's rare to not have a 3-bet in that scenario. I think all the pairs that aren't improved by this board too much are going to call. I'm even going to give them the long shots like 9s and 8s, but we'll go with all the pairs. And then there's hands like, 7-6 suited, 8-6, 8-7, 9-8, 9-7, 9-6. All those ones, 7-5 suited, 6-5, 5-4, 4-3. 3 deuce is kind of low. I'm gonna give that up. 9-10, 10-8, Jack 10. The Jack 10 off. People play that way too much. Jack 9 off. People play way too much. Jack 9, Jack 8. Queen Jack, Queen 9, or to Queen 9 suited. I believe the King Jack suited would 3-bet. A lot of people don't 3-bet King 10 properly. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in his possible range. And we'll give him the King 9 as well to have a little bit more playability. I think hands like King Queen off can be there. It's kind of interesting because a lot of players 3-bet it, but let's go ahead and give it to him. So this is a reasonable range with what he would flat us with on the button. Now this is a practical range. This isn't a GTO range. GTO range is a little bit tighter than this, but this is a practical range of what I believe is happening here. I don't want to run it against the actual range because that makes it too complicated. So this is my perception when somebody does this in the hand. There can even sometimes be hands like Queen Jack or Queen 10 off, but I'm not going to put those in. So let's apply those. Okay. And then versus our actual hand, the 6 of hearts, 6 of clubs. Let's add that. And now let's do the board. Is the 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs. Let's see. 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs, deuce of spades, 9 of diamonds on the turn, and the 4 of spades on the river. And what we're going to see right now is our equity in this situation versus this conceivable range when we have 6-6. How likely are we to win? 62%. Kind of crazy, huh? So when he bets 62%, that's all the equity that we need, and he bets 3,500 into 3,690. That's a 1-to-1 stacked pot ratio. We only need to win here 1 in 3 times. So obviously we have double that. So this is an all-day snap call. I'm not talking out of my ass. I knew it because I've done this a few hundred times and run these numbers. And you realize when you give a conceivable range to what goes on, this is what you end up with. So this is really an easy call on the river.
This is a really tough spot.
I don't think so.
Folding, but I can't say that I've never called here. I think we do want to consider calling here sometimes if we think our villain is capable. I mean, 10 Jack, Jack Queen missed. It could have floated with something like Queen 10 suited. Even something like King 10 suited could have stabbed. So we're not blocking any of those. We are blocking something like 6-7 suited if they would have played that this way. And we were deep enough, and they're on the button, so they're flatting pretty wide. They probably would flat 6-7 suited. So I actually can see, I could really go either way here. But we do want to make sure villain's capable if we are considering a call here. If villain is under bluffing, then this turns into an easy fold. The main hands we are going to call here, any 9s we decided to check.
People don't bluff the river often enough live. Online, they definitely don't do it. But honestly, when they do, I think this is how they do it. So I like my call here all day.
I think it's reasonable to have slow played, something like 8-9 suited. We're blocking everything that can continue.
I mean, yeah.
And we're so far ahead. And I think this is another...
See, but that's a cooler. And to me, that's monsters under the bed. Like 8-9 suited and the suited ace-8. Those are really the only hands that really can bet this way for power. You know what I'm saying? Because we could be pot controlling with an overpair and then not be able to fold. But in truth, that's monsters under the bed. So I don't like erring on the side of caution in these scenarios. It is early enough in this tournament. We're pretty deep. The blinds are only 50, 100. This is not a fold you make at this point because we can re-enter. And if you're not playing something to re-enter it, you shouldn't be playing that. So if you're not going to re-enter a tournament with 50 big blinds, then you're just going to be too weak overall. And I think if you're sitting there going, this is ace-8 or ace or 8-9 all day, I think you have no business playing a tournament this big.
Another reason why it's so important to have those aces in your turn check range, because it's hard to have enough hands that we can check call, turn and river.
Right.
And that's just like the best hand to do it with because it needs the least amount of protection. And then it ensures that we just don't get owned in these spots. So, I'm probably folding here like 60-70% of the time and calling the rest. Looks like we did fold here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. We are still, very much so in the tournament by folding. And I think this is one where the thing that we're not getting the explanation from Faraz is his actual read on the situation because we don't get to see the timing tells We don't get to have any player history in these. So let's do this one more time. And we're going to use the actual range from the site to actually define what hands should call us. So let's go to the tools section. And this is tournament GTO charts. And the blinds, we have 50. So let's call it at 60. Let's go on the side, the bigger side. Our position, or his position, this is what we're trying to calculate for, is the button versus a raise. Okay? Other opponent's position is the hijack, right? We're in the hijack in this one. Yeah, we're in the hijack. What hands are calling here perfectly? I think my range is pretty right. I mean, my range is pretty dead on just from looking at it. I mean, I gave him the ace-10 suited. I didn't give him the ace-9. I shouldn't have closed it, man. If I didn't know I was going to do this. King-queen suited. Okay, king-jack suited. King-10. I'm just taking the ones that are 50% or greater. Queen-jack suited. Ace-queen off. But all the rest of these are 3-bets, right? Aces, kings, ace-king. We're looking for all the green cards. So, the deuces, yeah, I didn't give him the deuces. 5-4, 6-5. I think my range is pretty close here. I think I might have actually been a little bit looser. Except for some of the little suited connectors and stuff. I didn't give him things like king-7 suited, just because that's not something players know. I gave him the queen-9 and the queen-10. I gave him the jack-9, the jack-10. I didn't give him the jacks, because that's a 3-bet. 10-9 suited is a 3-bet more often than not, but let's say he's not the perfect player. Like, I'm 3-betting it on the button, but I don't know how common that is, so I'm going to give him 10-9. The 10-8, obviously. Yeah, so my range was pretty close, man. Like, I was pretty on the nose with it. I guess I didn't give him the suited... Well, I gave him all the suited cards, but there's some that he shouldn't play. I think folding the ace-5 is a little... Or 3-betting the ace-5 is a little aggressive, although it's definitely a move I would do. So the ace-8, the ace-7, the ace-6. Ace-6 is kind of rough. It's 50-50-ish. Let's give him the ace-5. Okay. So this is the actual range with what he should call at 50 big blinds on the button when opened from the hijack, when facing a raise from the hijack, right? So now let's go back and let's do our actual hand again. Sorry, I know I have to re-enter it, but I think this is important stuff. So we apply this, and then our actual hand is the 6 of hearts. Oh, God damn it. 6 of hearts, 6 of clubs. Okay. And then the board is the 8 of hearts, 8 of clubs. I always forget you can type this in. Deuce of spades. The turn is the 9 of diamonds, and the river is the 4 of spades. Now let's evaluate it. It's a better call now. So if he's playing GTO perfect, it's a better call. It's 67%. So I think this is one where Faraz had information we don't have, so he folded. Granted, the rivers are under bluffed online a lot. I don't think people bluff often enough on the river. But if I'm in a 109, I got to assume these players are capable of it. So I think my call here is a little closer to 60%, and my folds are a little closer to 40%. Or 30%, and I think there's a 10% chance that on the river here, I donk block bet. Like, when this 4 comes out, I might just bet like 1,200 just to block bet. Now, the pot's huge before that, you know what I'm saying? That's like a third pot bet. But sometimes players will see that, and they'll just call you with a hand that beats you that would have put you all in, like pocket 10s. Because they think you're trying to do something weird. So that's a 10% move on my part in this situation. But I think, honestly, I'm check calling all day. I think this is one where we don't have all the information that Faraz has. I'm not going to say he's wrong. I think versus the field, I think he's right 100% of the time. But I think in this specific instance with our hand and with the betting pattern, I think I like the call way more than I like the fold. That being said, if I had the information he had, I probably would have folded too. Let's do another one. I feel good. I like that we're running these down.
Poker coaching, Tristan Wade with another quiz. This one from the $500 Action folder out of the hijack.
Important point here, $500 WSOP MTT. That means it's probably a ring event, which means it's going to attract a lot of loose players. So just bear that in mind. A $500 tournament on WSOP.com. It plays like a live tournament. So $500 live tournament is what I kind of classify these as, which is kind of like playing $55 or $100 tournaments online. Actually, 55 and 33s. I think the $100 tournaments are actually stronger fields online.
500. And we're here in the big blind, and I want to know, what should you do with this one? Should you fold, should you call, or should you re-raise to 18?
I'm kind of always split here. Like with no other caller, like if somebody else had called, I would love a 3-bet because then we can squeeze. But in all honesty, versus an unknown player, I might play this one to trap. I don't know if 3-betting is a great idea. We have 60 blinds. I think I like calling or 3-betting about 50-50 versus one player. We could definitely 3-bet, but I think, I don't know. I just feel like going with call here. And I can't always explain that, so I'm going to go with call.
All right, well, in this
Oh,
spot,
should have
that's
3-bet.
definitely not an option. So we're torn between calling and raising. And this is
Wait a minute. Your answer called 10 points, but it gave me 0. Hang on a second here. Wait a minute. Is that bugged?
hey, poker coaching.
All right, call.
All
All
well, in this
right,
spot,
give me my
that's
points.
definitely not an option. So we're torn between calling and raising. And this is a pretty good hand just to defend our big blind with. We don't really want to do that often. Play a bloated pot out of position with a large red opener behind.
Yeah.
This is ace 10 suited. I think I'm strong enough to do that a little more frequently. But ace 10 offsuit, I think we mostly run the time. So I do call. Get an ace high flop. We're going to check our range more or less. And we're facing a 500 chip bet. So what should we do now? Should we fold? Should we call? Or should we raise to 1500?
I see no point in raising. 0. Because if we raise and we're beat, we're not going to get the fold. And if we call, we're going to allow the player to continue bluffing the turn. So this is a call all day.
Again, we're not going to go anywhere. If you wanted to raise here, I think it should
Oh,
be
nice.
too
I
light.
took a few pieces of salmon out the freezer since
This is fine
so I
myself.
felt the chicken left.
Really tough
Nice.
spots.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to cook before I start today.
Oh, okay.
So really your only option is to call. And we get to the big spades, check the turn, our opponent checks. And now the jack of diamonds on the grid. I want to know, what should we do? Should we check? Should we bet 1,000 or should we bet 2,400?
So this is kind of a brutal spot. I think the choice is between betting small and checking. Because checking, we allow this player to bluff at us again, and that is a great bluff card. But betting 1,000, we do get calls from King Queen and hands that we beat. But then again, you know what? There's more hands that we don't beat, and I think that they're going to raise us a lot. Honestly, I'm raising with Ace Jack here if I'm in this guy's position. So I'm going to go ahead and check and allow him to bluff.
Alright, so if you wanted to check this river, I understand. We kind of go into bluff catch mode if that's the case. And I gave that score.
I'm trying to entice him into bluffing, so I guess what I should have done is bet like 800 or 1,000 to induce a bluff.
I think the only hands we got to worry about are Queen Jack or Ace Jack.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Ace Jack probably bets the turn pretty frequently, so I think we're really only worried about Queen Jack. And I don't know if we're always going to see a bet from our king side or king king. So with that said, I think betting 1,000 here is the best option.
Yeah.
Just for 10 points. And the reason why I think we're high enough in that range with a pretty good ace, really good value for most aces. And then
And it's one bet, right? Like it's our first aggressive action. We've only called in this hand so far. So leading out on the river, you're not going to get people to fold for one bet usually, especially if you make it reasonable, like 1,000 here. I mean, that's like 40% pot, right? So, yeah. you know what? Because king queen will absolutely call you. Any ace will call you. Like, I don't even think you can even raise here with ace king, honestly. You can raise with ace jack, but that's a very small percentage. There's sometimes you're going to be beat by a straight, but I think even the straight might call you here because they'd be afraid of the flush. So, like king 10, you know what I'm saying? Unless they had like the king of diamonds in their hand, then they might raise because it's far less likely that they're beat. But yeah, I think the lead out it makes more sense when you look at it that way.
We can also get value from the queen 10, queen 9, queen 8 suited,
Right.
queen king, and we just shouldn't really be getting raised.
Because our hand can look like king jack is what he's saying. Like when queen 10 is here, king jack would definitely float this flop. Especially like king jack of spades. Now that's missed the spade on the river, right? We would go check check on the turn, and we would have a jack. So leading out would be like a marginal bluff / blocker bet, but a hand like queen 10 should definitely call here. I mean those calls are bread and butter all day.
A whole lot here. Even a hand like queen jack might not raise us. So I think just going for a small value bet is fine. I don't think we need to be over half pot here really. So if you decide to go 2400, I think that's just too big of a bet. Although if you're up against someone really sticky, I don't really see that, but a little ambitious nonetheless. So those are my thoughts on why we should be betting the river here, even though a flush leads there. And that's more or less the lesson.
I like that he didn't give us the answer of what happened. So I think this is one where in retrospect, he saw a good spot, and I think he made the same mistake I did. I think, and this is just the meta, this is the meta of gaming the game. I think he checked it and realized later it was a mistake because he just saw a showdown from like king queen or queen 10 and was just like, fuck, I missed value. And those like really drive you crazy. Like as a poker player, the more value spots you miss where you're like, you were in no danger of getting raised, logically you could have figured it out. When you miss those value bets, man, oh God, it drives you fucking bananas. So I think that's what happened here. I think it's good that he didn't show us the answer, that he checked and the guy checked and we just won, you know what I'm saying? Because it's hard to reinforce that we missed a value bet. We lost 1,000 chips in this pot that, we could have easily gotten. All right. It is about 12:30. We've done about, like an hour and change here? I would normally go longer, but I do want to play today around 3 o'clock, and I still want to go to the grocery store, and I got to cook some stuff before I get started. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I'm going to send you guys over to DMAC, and yeah, I think he's the only one playing poker on right now. Or he might be playing New World, but he's still a fun guy to watch, and he has the thing where he double streams, so there's no delay in the chat. So we're going to send you over to him, and I'll see you guys around 3 o'clock for some MTT goodness. And have a good day, guys.